Hey, I hope everyone is doing well. It's been almost 2 years since I uploaded a video onto this channel. I got a little bit sidetracked with other development projects and so on, but over the last month or so, I took another look at this three-dimensional world that's built using only HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I implemented some updates which weren't too difficult to implement actually, and I wanted to go over them. But before I do that, let me quickly go over some of the comments and the feedback on the previous videos because I thought there were some really interesting points actually, and so let me talk about them real quick. So there was actually a lot of positive feedback on the two previous videos. In one of the videos, in the very first video I uploaded, I just demonstrated how the different HTML elements can be organized and how they can be structured to make cubes and so on. And probably 95% of the feedback was positive. And so thanks for all that feedback and the comments there. And then in the other video, I took it a little bit further and demonstrated how you could use the cubes to make castles and other structures and so on. So that worked out great. So by far, the number one comment I received on the videos was asking for a tutorial or an explanation on how to build these worlds. So in response to that, what I'll do from now on is rather than just showing the video, or I'm sorry, rather than just showing the updates in the video, I'll actually go ahead and show the programming behind it. So for example, one of the updates is I added a blue sky in the background. Another is I added this character, which I've been calling a mannequin. These textures here are CSS. So I'll actually show the source code, and it's actually not very complicated at all. Anyone could literally copy that CSS, paste it into their own cubes or onto their own flooring, and they'll initially have this CSS pattern here, which is supposed to mimic grass and so on. So that's what I'll do for that comment. The other comment that I received by far was, why not use something called Canvas? So yeah, there were a lot of comments about Canvas, and so on. And the reason why I decided not to use Canvas was because I really wanted native HTML elements on this entire three-dimensional world. So for example, if I were to go in here, these are all HTML elements. I can literally right-click on this, inspect the element, and edit this as HTML. So for example, if I want to change the background color to red, I could just type red, or I can just type blue, or whatever color I want, pink. I can pretty much select anything I want. And so I can edit this with CSS because it is basically a div. It's an HTML element. I can even go in here, edit this as HTML, and type in something like a hello world, hit enter. And by the way, you'll notice that this renders in 3 dimensions. So as I walk around this, as I walk around this, you'll notice that the hello world is actually in 3 dimensions. And just like you can in HTML, you can, for example, I'll just make the world bold and maybe make the hello italic and hit enter. So now you can see hello world is in italic and bold. It's just like editing HTML. And actually, let me show another really cool concept real quick. If I go to YouTube, and I saw a live video of Earth, I think it was recently. Let me see if I can quickly grab this here. Okay, so if I grab the embed code, I don't want to show all the advanced stuff. Let me quickly grab the embed code, come back into the left side of my cube here, edit as HTML. Instead of hello world, I'll actually paste the embed code. It's an iframe. I know that the side of the cube is 100 by 100. Save that, and now I've literally got, a video playing on the side of this cube, and it renders in 3D. I can move around here. Not sure if you can hear it. I can hear it, and it's a little bit loud, so I'll just pause it for now. But that is why I decided to use native HTML elements, because you can't just paste a YouTube video, for example, into a piece of a cube in Canvas. So anything can go here. As you can imagine, not just YouTube videos, but entire web pages, links, Facebook like buttons, tweet buttons, links to other websites. You can even put JavaScript in here. Basically anything that you can write in HTML, you can put onto the side of these cubes. You can put them into the ground, and you can put them into this mannequin here, and so on. Obviously, if you're putting JavaScript into things, there's some security concerns there, but that's something that we can address later. So with that being said, those are the 2 responses to all the comments on the previous videos. Thanks so much for the comments. I really appreciate it. And also, so now I'll get into the updates. Let's see. So I guess there's 5 main updates I wanted to get into. There's now random spawn locations, there's textures, there's a sky, you can now hit spacebar to jump, and there's some camera improvements. Before I get into the updates, I want to quickly say thank you to Fred Wiegman, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. We've been collaborating a little bit on Facebook, sharing some ideas, and just want to say thank you because a lot of those ideas have helped this project move forward. Okay, so I'll get into the updates, and with each of the updates, I'll actually show how it's programmed, so that way anyone who's also writing their own HTML and CSS code can also implement these same features into their 3-dimensional worlds also. Okay, so the first update I'll talk about is random spawn locations. So basically, before it was a very static world where no matter when you came to the world, everything was static. But now, these are, I've created random spawn locations, which means that every time you refresh the page, you start out in a random location. And not only that, there's actually 5 other mannequins that spawn in random locations. And so let me just see if I can. So there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, and there should be 5 total. There's the 5th one. And there's also 5 cubes that spawn in random locations. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so that is basically just done via JavaScript. So let me see what the easiest way to show the JavaScript is here. Let's see if I go into sources, JavaScript, main. I'm not sure how easy this will be to follow here, but basically, I know that there's a for loop. Okay, so here's the for loop. It basically just loops 0 through 5. So those are the 5 times that we go through this loop, and on every loop iteration it is creating a new cube, and then it is assigning a random position for the cube. So every cube has an x and y coordinate, so the x coordinate is set to something between 0 and some large number. I forgot what that number is, but anyway, I want to say this is between, I want to say this is between 0 and 19, and then it multiplies it by 100. So in other words, the random x coordinate could be 0, 100, 200, 300, all the way up to 1900. And same thing for the y coordinate as well. So this is the loop that shows 5 cubes in 5 random locations. And same thing for the mannequins. So you have your loop here that loops 5 times. And then similar to the cubes, you have random x and y coordinates for the mannequins, but I also made it a random rotation, so that way the mannequins are facing different directions. So you'll notice this one is this mannequin is facing towards us. This mannequin is kind of facing to the right a little bit. This mannequin is facing to the side. This one is facing to the left. So it just varies depending on the mannequin. So that is this random spawn locations at least adds some variability to the 3D world and makes the world a little bit more exciting. Obviously, there's more work to do here, just as there is on every update that I've written. But at least now, every time you refresh the page, you get a little bit of a different experience. And I know this one way to improve this, for example, is instead of having random spawn locations, this should probably be multiplayer enabled, right? So that multiple players can be on here, and these are actually human-controlled players rather than just random static spawn locations. So that'll be done in the future, but that's what we have for now. Okay, the next update was textures. So as you can see on the floor here, there are these textures. And this one was meant to mimic grass. And I want to say thank you to this webpage that I stumbled across here by Leah Veru. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And just want to say thanks to this webpage here where they share some of these CSS textures. I had no idea this was possible. So they literally give the CSS here, and all you have to do to build this texture is copy and paste that CSS, and they make that free to use on this page here with credits, and I did credit them in the GitHub project. So basically, if I were to right click on this ground here, we can come in here and we can see that here's the code for the background, and this background literally creates this sort of green texture here, and then there's, let me right click on this ground here, and then there's a whole nother background code for this here, and these gradients create this background texture here. And there's a whole different bunch to choose from. You can even make arrows here as shown, and I think that's, yeah, that's pulled from this example right here. So the textures look great in 3 dimensions, and I should quickly note that before I had these textures, actually what I had done is put JPEGs on here, and I had also tried, I believe what they're called is WebP images. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're called WebP images. I tried JPEGs and PNGs, and they did render great. I actually had 3-dimensional grass and 3-dimensional rock and ground and gravel and other sorts of things on the ground, and it looked good, but the problem was there was a little bit of lag. It didn't render that quickly. Even in Chrome, it didn't render. So oh, I'm sorry, it did render. It was just laggy. As I tried to move around, it just didn't, there were spots that wouldn't render correctly, and there was a little bit of delay in movement sometimes. So going with CSS textures, I noticed that I can move around much more quickly and fluidly without any lag. So I think I'm going to stay with CSS textures for now. It would be really cool to have a better CSS gradient for grass and for rock rather than these that I just basically copied and pasted for now. So if someone actually wants to make a grass CSS texture, by all means I would put that in here, or rock or brick and so on, because we will need those eventually. Okay, going into the next update, you'll notice in the previous video it was just plain gray or plain white up here, and so now I added this blue sky, and it actually adds a lot to the world. Actually, when I sort of first added the sky, it was kind of a refreshing moment. And the sky is really simple. Basically, what I did, I want to say it's either the main or the body tag that I added that on. Was it the main? Yeah, it was the main. Okay, so it is literally this one line here. So in CSS, there's new code called linear gradient, and this function accepts these arguments here where you can go from one color to the next. So basically, as you can see, I literally just typed in sky blue and white. And so the gradient back here goes from sky blue at the top to white at the bottom. This is really easy to change. So if I change this to red, it'll go from red to white, and now the sky looks very angry or very hot. I can change it, as you can imagine, to any color, from black to white, from tan to white, from pink to white. So it just depends on, I guess, what mood you're in or what the weather's like. But for now, I've just got it as going from sky blue to white. So again, this is really straightforward CSS. Anyone can literally take this line. In fact, I could even come in here, come to the side of the cube, and rather than a background color of blue, I can paste this. Oops, I can literally put in background, linear gradient, and as you can see, all of those sides go from blue to white. And I think this side has to be rotated 90 degrees so that it's consistent with the sky in the back. But anyway, you get the idea. You can literally copy and paste the CSS so that it takes effect on any div or any HTML element. Okay, next one. So this one was kind of fun to program. You can now hit spacebar to jump, and let me just show that. So if I hit space, the character jumps. You can also move and jump, which is pretty cool. And also, if you just hold down the spacebar, he just keeps jumping, which is nice. So let me see if I can quickly find the JavaScript for that. So sources, JavaScript, main, and let me find the jump function. Okay, so here basically I'm detecting a spacebar click. So this is a loop that occurs every 1 centisecond. So that's that's 100 times per second. And if it detects that the spacebar is clicked, first it adds a class called background color green to this area down here. So as you notice, if I hold down the spacebar, there's a green background on the space element down here. So that's what that is, just to show what key is being pressed. And then it calls the jump function, and it passes the actual mannequin as a parameter. So let me find this function called jump. Okay, so function jump accepts the mannequin, and basically it does it uses jQuery. Sorry, the spacing is a little bit misaligned here, but I'll have to fix that later as this evolves. But basically, it uses the animate function, and it uses the step, I guess, portion of this function. And basically, it going back to sort of high school geometry, it uses an inverted parabola quadratic function to determine what the z coordinate is as the time goes from 0 to 100. So as now goes from 0 to 100, it constantly makes this calculation of how high the mannequin is at that given point. So I forgot what the maximum value is here, but basically it jumps from a z coordinate of 0 to about, let's say, 50. I don't think it's exactly 50, or actually it might actually be, I'm not sure. But let's just say it jumps up to 50. So that means it goes from 0, and then in a quadratic fashion it goes up to 25, and then maybe 30, and then 35, and then 37, 40, and gradually goes up to 50, and then gradually comes back down very quickly, back down to 0. So this is the step function. Again, if you're looking at this web page, you can literally go in, inspect the JavaScript, find this jump function, and here it is right here. The linear easing doesn't really apply here. We're using a quadratic formula for the easing, actually. Okay, so that's the jump function. Next update, camera improvements. So this was this was good code cleanup, actually. So before this update, if anyone resized their screen, for example, if I were to inspect element and resize the screen like this, make it wider, make it thinner, and so on, the mannequin would actually fall off of the screen. So I basically updated it so that every time the screen is resized to be really skinny or to be really wide, there's calculations that are made that update the perspective of the world such that the mannequin stays in the center. And again, I'll show the JavaScript for that. So let me go to my sources, JavaScript, main, and I believe it's towards the bottom here. Okay, so here it is. So to detect when the window is resized with jQuery, you use this function here. So window.resize. And what I've done is I created a function called set the perspective around the mannequin and then update the perspective. So let's go into this function here. So where's this function? So set perspective around mannequin, and oops, let me find the actual function. Okay, there it is. So basically this function accepts two arguments, the perspective and the mannequin. And what it does is the perspective is basically the position of the entire world with relation, or I'm sorry, it's let's see how I can explain this. It's what we can see in the browser window here. Even though the world is vast, our perspective is this little view right here. And we always want the mannequin to be in the center of the perspective. So as you can imagine, the rotation and the X and Y X and Y positioning of the perspective are dependent on the position and rotation of the mannequin. So that's what we have here. When the mannequin rotates to the left, the perspective actually rotates in the opposite direction. So that's why there's this negative symbol here. So as you can imagine, as I rotate to the left, the entire perspective actually has to rotate to the right that same number of degrees in order to keep the mannequin centered. Same thing with the X and Y coordinates here. The Z coordinate never changes, and so I just left it static at this calculation, or at this number here. I also made it so that you can move the camera up and down. So if I hit the up key, I can come up here and see things from above. And similarly, if I hold down the down key, I can hold it, or we can move the camera down. It kind of reminds me of Nintendo 64 games or older three-dimensional games where you could move the camera and you could literally look around walls just by moving the camera around and so on. So let me see if I can quickly pull up that JavaScript as well, because I think it's pretty interesting. So let's see, here's the main JavaScript, and I know it's called look down. So basically when I detect an up arrow being pressed or a down arrow, so when the up arrow is being held, the look down function is being called. When the down arrow is being pressed, the look up function is being called. So if I just dive into this look down and look up functions, it's pretty simple. Basically, I'm just taking this view and rotating it either negative 0.01 degrees or positive 0.01 degrees as the arrow's being held down. So let me show what that looks like in the CSS. So if I go back into here, so I've got the world and there's this view here, and what we'll do is pay attention to this rotation value right here, the rotate X value. So as I'm holding down the up arrow, I am basically gradually looking down at the world, and the rotation of X is decreasing. And conversely, or inversely, not sure what the right word is there. I think it's inversely. If I hold down the down arrow, I'm looking up at the world, and the rotation is increasing. So that's so those are the camera improvements. The mannequin stays in the center, and I can look up or look down at the world. I can look down here, and I can start to see the top of these cubes, which is actually red. And I can take it down so far that I can actually go through the ground and look under the world. So I probably need to update this so that I can only come down here and not go under the ground, because that's a little weird. But that is those are the camera improvements. So that's pretty much it for this video. I hope people found this interesting. Definitely, as before, please let me know what your feedback is. I'm open to positive feedback, but I'm also open to negative or constructive feedback, constructive criticism feedback as well. Any way to improve this, I would definitely be open to any applications, any ideas that you want to apply this to. I would be all ears also, because I think this has some real potential, not just as a game, but this can be used to model all sorts of things in engineering and in physics. And if we could do this in browsers, I think that would be extremely beneficial to a lot of people. So also, let me know in the comments what features you would like, because with this project, I don't really know what to program next. There's a lot of different things that I could program, right? I could put clouds in the sky. I could enable users to chat with each other. I could enable different shapes other than cubes. I could put more, instead of just jumping, I could enable maybe the character to dance. There's all sorts of different, I could make the movement speed different and the look speed. I could make the world more vast. So I never know really what to program next or what people want. So if you could just leave in the comments what you'd like to see next, that would be great. And probably what I'll do is I'll take the top voted comment, or maybe the top few voted comments, and I'll program that next, and I'll actually show it in the next video that that I upload. So thanks so much for watching. I hope this wasn't too much information all at once, and I hope the video wasn't too long. But again, just leave your comments, please. I'd love to know what you think of this. And in the meantime,